When our thoughts are in alignment with the laws of nature and the laws of our mind and our soul, we have the ability to become the best version of ourselves. Ultimately, no matter your theology or your beliefs, there's a yearning and inside that wants us to strive for more, that wants us to give of ourselves at times, to be generous. And there are times in that feeling inside of us that when we become a little bit more self-centered or selfish, that we feel the opposite reaction. Those chemicals and those gut reactions will tell us if we're in alignment or not. What does thinking well have to do with chiropractic? Well, I just want to kind of start out with some basics right now. Number one, your spine is a direct reflection of all the things that have happened to you and are currently happening at you. If your body is under stress that it cannot handle, it trips a breaker. Think of your spine as the fuses in your house. And if your house becomes overloaded or overwhelmed on a circuit, it trips the breaker. When our circuits become overwhelmed or we have a short circuit, we short out our body's ability to function at its highest level. It is easily felt and assessed by my hands and my assessments when these things happen. The reason it's so important for us to dig into the workshop of thinking well is because our bodies have three main causes of dysfunction. They are thoughts, they are traumas, and they are toxins. In our life, we are constantly being challenged with these three stressors in our life. Our body was built to adapt, to handle, to reverse or at least push away these stressors and handle them to a certain extent. But when our body becomes overwhelmed, overtaxed, unhealthy, sick, degenerative, toxic, and depressed, our bodies are not able to handle the stressors that we put on them. In that sense, the body reacts and we have subluxation. Misalignments of our spine simply let me know as your chiropractor that your body is under stress that it can't handle. My job, very simply, is not just to adjust away the subluxations that continue to pop up, but to also try to educate you on how not to end up in the same positions that you did when you first started in care. So when we start to look at these three major causes of stress, I felt my duty every month to try to hit those topics at least every week so that you hear something about eating well, something about thinking well, and something about moving well. As I get more seasoned into the understanding of how our bodies heal and how they break down, I understand that we do need systems and we need discipline more than anything. Discipline equals freedom. But if we're disciplined, then it's easy for our bodies still to become bored or mundane. As well as the understanding that we need variety, we need feedback, we need those little parts of our body to say, yes, I'm making progress. So progress must be made or we won't continue a process. There are two reasons that we'll make changes in our lives. And if you're on this call, it might be because you've decided to be inspired or motivated, because that usually makes change. The other is because of desperation. Desperation can make us do things until maybe that stressor is gone. Inspired and motivated people do things because they know that the long game has a chance of making their health a place where they want to be and stay. So tonight, we're going to dig a little bit into the thought of how do our thoughts, specifically, how does chiropractic relate to selfishness versus generosity? As we start to look into this, I see a continuum to some degree. And I think that there's on the far end, we could be stuck in our kind of primitive brain, our primitive selves. Back in a certain point in our development, being greedy is just part of us staying alive. Self-preservation and instinct is kind of the lowest level of us as humans to stay alive. It's been stated that we're all in love with ourselves to some extent. To be selfish, on a very simple note, may gain us some temporary pleasure, for lack of a better term, or help us in our very temporary needs. But as we've developed our bodies and our souls over time, we start to realize that there is more than just ourselves in this world, that we're all connected, that we've been put on this earth to help serve each other, to be connected to each other. On the far end of selfishness, I would say, could be altruism, of generosity to such an extent where someone is maybe giving more of themselves than they have. And I think this is a very interesting conversation because I have many people. I'd say if I had to split it down the middle, there is one side of patients who may just have enough in their tank to worry about themselves. Like, what do I need to do, doc? Can barely get by. They're not necessarily someone who's giving a lot to others so much, but they're so stuck in their dysfunction that they can only really think of what their needs are. I have patients who are suffering due to the fact that they have given more of themselves than they had. They can't give more than they have. And in that sense, over-accommodating, over-giving, and in an attempt to maybe be accepted, be liked, to serve someone who's selfish, has led them into some sickness. So on both ends, there may not be a solid answer to this or an exact science to understanding these things, but know that the breed in our bodies, generosity tends to breed chemicals and hormones and a sense of ourselves that is higher than just being selfish. The chemicals that are released when we truly have given without expecting something in return increases our serotonin, our dopamine. These chemicals are very vital for us to stay happy and to stay healthy. There are so many times that someone who may be in a tough position finds that they are asked by someone for help, or they decide they're going to help serve someone. And in doing so, they realize, you know what, maybe they have more to be thankful for than they realized. I have a patient right now, very interesting story. She's a younger girl in my estimation, maybe in her 20s later, just decided to foster a 16-year-old. And this girl, I would say, came in with a lot of problems, many, many years in a row. And just decided to kind of take on this, and maybe it could be perceived as an extra stress on her, but I think has actually given her some vision and vitality to serving someone else and realizing that you know what, her body and her problems might not have been as significant as what this person's going through. And I feel like her last adjustment was better than it's ever been. She seemed in a better place. And technically, she said, it's been a whirlwind. Theoretically, it looked like a lot more is going on, but her body was responding in a way that said it's more at peace. So there is so much to kind of, I guess, go through on this aspect. But I think we all need to kind of look at our tendency to serve and our tendency to be needy. And the balance is important, but also understanding our limits, as well as when is giving too much, when is needing too much. Maybe many have said the hole you get through is only as big as the hole you get through. Selfless service has been something that the Rotaries pride themselves on in many organizations. The Bible is full of statements of service. But I think knowing, is that service being done from a place deep down that is selfless, or is it selfish? Sometimes we can be giving in the hopes that returns us more than we gave, or in some attempt like a business deal. If we treat things as a simple business deal where I'll give this, but I expect to have more in return, usually doesn't lead our souls and our bodies and our minds to a place in which we're gaining from those experiences. They may be tearing us away. Expectations, the thief of joy, as we would say. And sometimes in giving with a lot of expectations could really lead to a place in which our body are in a more stressed and degenerative place. So just some things. I love it if you guys have any questions or comments on what I've said so far, or does it bring up any questions you have? I'd love to, you can unmute your mic, you can just even unmute yourselves.
Can you hear me? I'm in my car.
I can. Thank you,
Okay.
Melanie, for jumping in. Questions?
Yeah. So
Comments?
I was just talking with a girl that I was meeting with last night, and we were talking about these very things, but we were talking about anxiety and worry and just your thoughts and things that overtake you in this life. And, I've always been an over giver, and I've really had to learn to balance that in my life, because as much as I love to give, and there is a satisfaction and a joy to giving and serving and thinking about other people rather than just yourself and your problems. You have to have a balance with it. And even as I read through the Bible, I'm like, okay, well, if Jesus went away sometimes and he prayed, he got away alone. And I was thinking of the Bible story of Mary and Martha, and how Martha was always busy, doing. And Mary was sitting at Jesus's feet, and Jesus said, Martha, slow down. Like, Mary's chosen the good part. And it just always shows that balance where, we are to be serving, but it is, no matter what, it is stress on your body, and it does affect you in good and bad ways, like you were saying. So yeah, that's all really good. Those are all really great points that you brought out.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I was hoping Lisa would chime in just with any kind of wonderful wisdom that she has. So Lisa's on the phone. We're so blessed. She coaches us in our office and has been, a student of helping others through this. And I'm just wondering, Lisa, like what when you see these two things, what comes to your mind, and how do you see people suffering with both ends of that?
Yeah, I mean, what Melanie shared, made me think about something that I do share with my clients, almost with everyone. And that is the idea of what I call good versus good intentions. And the way I find that people can most balance a generous and loving heart with selfishness is, whatever we do, we have to ask ourselves, is it good? Is it really good for that person? Or is it a good intention? And a good intention is always really going to be about us, about some reward we want, something we want to get out of it. So ultimately, it's got that the other side of the coin to it, a little bit of a selfish motive. But if something's truly good and we want to fill that need, that's a kind of a good gauge for being generous from a place that has, is kind of a pure and soft heart. So I would share that in light of this chapter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So I think it's a good, we had to say, is this good, or is this a good intention? Because good means that it's supporting both involved, right? Both parties are gaining in that. And I know that in these chapters, and Melanie, I don't know if I probably told Melanie, but the Rays of the Dawn is the book that we go through, and digging into this a lot deeper than we are, has some pages into looking at that really deeply. But I do think that there's I think, where does it state here, that when we give, if someone's not willing to, I guess, give of themselves, or if someone's not willing to make any attempt at improving themselves, that giving into something that, or someone that doesn't have the potential, I'm trying to remember the statement itself, but doesn't want to even improve, then is that really a good? Is it good for both involved? Is it just going to be draining of us? I'm trying to remember where that was, but yes. And Ron, I think Rhonda, you had a simple statement. One day I just saw it. Where'd it go? Is it the golden rule? I think do unto others as they do unto you. Is that? Yeah. Yes. All right. Perfect. Yes. So I feel like in life, the challenges too come about, I think, when we are attempting to live in that place where, we're trying to do unto others as we like done unto ourselves, and it doesn't come back that way sometimes. And how do we deal with that? How do we handle that struggle, that challenge? And where is it in that sense that we are still to give, even if it wasn't received? And I think that's where the giving always does need to be done without expectations, and that is a huge and hard thing to do sometimes, is for sure. Let me see I wanted to mention that when I. Oh yeah, it requires fine control and discretion, never to do for others what they're unwilling to do for themselves. That's the one kind of statement that stuck out to me. We have to use that control and discretion, and it definitely talks about what I liked about this as well is saying, hey, if you're just generous to everything, then you may not have then the funds or the needs or the means to be generous to the thing that's the most important, that may come along next or afterwards. And there's a part where you could be generous to then not be able to support, ourselves in certain ways. But also going back, there's a part of our soul that needs more than just selfishness. And if we don't practice or attempt to jump into serving of others, and at some level, the book will say that our soul begins to degenerate and decay. That there's a part of us that we lose that may not be able to come back when we don't attempt to practice the senses of generosity. And we always try to bring this back. Oh, good, Melanie, you do not know about the book. Well, I have one if you want one. They're more expensive online, I believe, but that we need to practice understanding that there's always those two sides of the coin. There's kind of the more negative and there's the positive. There's the good and the evil, if you want to think of that, but more, we call it the good and the bad wolf. I think we talked about a couple times ago, but how do we feed the good wolf? Because the bad wolf never dies in the story that we talked about a month ago. That, there's always a battle inside of us between the good and the bad wolf. And the more that the good wolf is fed, the more chances that good wolf has to express itself. The more the bad wolf is fed, the more chances the bad wolf has to express itself. These bad things we're talking about are usually always I'd say on the left side, but they're the selfishness, they're greed, they're anger and worry. Those are the things that are going to be stressful, to us, and jealousy and those things. But on the other end, the good wolf, breeds on generosity, breeds on faith, breeds on hope. And those are the things that we're going to keep digging into and just reminding ourselves that day to day we have to make choices. And those choices are not always easy. They're not always simple. But are we feeding the good wolf or the bad wolf? I think that's just the question we continue to have to ask ourselves. And if we think we're feeding the good wolf, but in turn we almost feel more like the bad wolf, then that might be a good thing. That you go back to Lisa's statement, was that maybe a good intention versus just good. And we have to season ourselves and be discreet and really detailed about how we make these decisions. And I don't think it's easy. I think it's very well put together when you read the chapters. Did I see another comment in there? I don't know why I'm having a hard time finding comments. There they are. Yes. Yes, Rhonda, I think, said, sometimes personal generosity is not visible and does not need to be their focus. Right. Airplane. Or getting in our own, yes. Are we getting our own oxygen first? I think that would be the next step. Lisa, I don't know if you could jump in on this, but self-care. The struggle of some people, it's like a big buzzword now. I need my self-care. I think I feel like I have a lot of younger patients I call younger that, there's like, oh, I got to practice my self-care. I mean, it might be to the extent where employers are like, oh, those millennials, they want so much self-care, they don't want to work, and things like that. But I don't know if you're able to unmute. It's not working, and maybe. But self-care. There it is. How does someone gauge? Maybe are they doing? Maybe even trying to do self-care. Maybe it's not working. I don't know. When do we know? What's a gauge that you see for your clients that self-care is definitely needed at this point? Like you need to do something, and or where they might be saying, I need more and more self-care, which almost gets selfish, not to be called selfish, but where maybe they need to go outside. Do you see a balance there, or what do you suggest with that?
Well, and I think what a person can do is try to live out of their values. Mm-hmm. So once we identify for ourselves what our primary values are, and there are great lists online you can go find that list the million different values, and you can kind of filter them down to, say, your top 10 and then your top 5, and then rank your top 5. You get a very clear idea of what's important to you. And then living out of that place can be very powerful, because now we're not talking about, am I a certain person or not a certain person, as it relates to giving, generous, selfish. We're looking at a person who's just wisely living out of how they're wired, how they're most wired. And that can help us to see, how do we give, and how do we be generous, and how do we, and where might we be getting into a selfish place? And sometimes that's just, like you said, it's something that's based on a lifetime of gaining some wisdom. And I think we all have to start somewhere, but starting with our values can be a really powerful place to start.
Very interesting. I know you had recommended a website one time for that, values, and I can't remember the.
Yes, I think if you go to selfcompassion.com.
Self-compassion. Okay.
Under a woman named Dr. Kristen Neff, and she has some pretty powerful values lists there. And you can also kind of look at how self-compassionate are you, because you still have to come from a place of self-compassion. That's not selfishness. That's of, how am I caring for myself? And then once you know your values, how can I care for others? And so it is a case of, putting your oxygen on first, and then those of others. But yes, Kristen Neff, selfcompassion.com.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah,
I just have one thing. That just makes me think, of the saying, you can't draw out of a well that's empty. Like, you have to be full to be able to give and overflow into others. But I also love what she just said, and I forget what word you just used, but giving according to your own gifts or abilities. I can't remember what word you just used, but
your values, Melanie. Giving according to your values.
No, it was a different word that she used in a different sentence. I think you said abilities or something too, because you were talking values, but then like your own abilities, because I find that people are sometimes frustrated trying to give and give and give, because they're trying to be somebody else instead of like the unique way that God's made you and given you the abilities to do something, and just like giving out of your own abilities, knowing, what you're good at, what can you do? And that becomes a real joy when you use who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. How you're wired, I think, might be
wired. Yes, that was the word you said. How you're wired, because I find so many people comparing themselves with other people, and they're like, I want to be like that, and I'm not like her, and I can't do that. And it becomes like yourself, you're just down on yourself all the time, and it makes you depressed. But if you really know how you're wired and how you can give, it is such a joy to be able to give of your own abilities the way that you're created.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie. That's so insightful. That's why I'm trying to get more of us, kind of conversing through these things. But what I hear both of you kind of saying is that I think that if I am trying to find myself somewhat, or maybe understand my values by just giving and doing things for other people, that if I'm giving it from a place that is sort of not concrete, that's not solidified, that that is not a core values and understanding of myself, then it might become something that is almost more draining on me, because I might not be living from how I even could give. I'm just watching other people do it and they look happy. So if we can't help ourselves, I guess is that if we can't figure out at least how to maybe give to ourselves, I guess that's what the self-care would be. It's not selfish, it's caring so that you can care more, caring so that you can be the person that able to give back. And our society is so backwards and twisted in certain ways that makes it really hard, I think, to want to know who we are. We're all told who we should be, I guess, to a certain degree, and then how we are just sold to and drawn in certain directions with society. It can just make it so that we're just chasing shiny objects and things, and not really trying to find the shininess inside, right? The light inside of us is what needs to shine, and it shines when we embrace that light. I've come to the conclusion more and more that true healing of our bodies needs to happen not just in our physical body, but having some spiritual sense or connection, whatever that is going to be for someone, that we have to find out what is our values, what we believe, and where we come from, or how we got here, or why we're here. And if we can understand those things and start to live in accordance with those things, then a lot of things can start to change in our bodies. If we disconnect from that to some degree, we can be okay. But I think true connection, we call it in chiropractic, is, from man the spiritual to man the physical. When we can connect man the physical to man the spiritual, true connection and healing happens. So we're trying to kind of work this process in which we say our physical bodies are just a reflection of the alignment and attunement of our minds and our souls, ultimately. And this book kind of, I feel, puts it in the most simple way we can, is to say, how do we generate, exercise our soul? And I think our spiritual senses are so important, and that it all flows down. We have to understand our emotions. We need to understand our minds and our bodies, and they're so connected. But that my hope would be is this, is that for those listening, and if they're listening to this later on, is that you can't separate our minds from our bodies, that they need to be in balance. And that if you're looking at this and we say the two words of selfishness or generosity, and they cause any kind of stirring in you one way or the other, that it makes you say to yourself, why do I feel that way? What makes me feel that way when someone says this? Someone might say generosity, and you might get this gut feeling that, oh my gosh, it's these people that just want to look good. Who knows? Or selfishness might be like, well, I do want a lot of things for myself, but it's not because I'm just all about me. It's because I need to take care of myself. And whatever it is that stirs something inside you, you either say, I need to do something about this, I need to do something different, I need to understand it better, that spurs you for the next month to just start to dig into it. Journal about it. If you want to talk about it at a deeper level, you call Lisa. Lisa, we'll try to get your name out on the next newsletter, or at least your contact info. But Lisa is awesome. She runs Arate Wellness, and we love her. We've used her for so many things. But she is a great resource. So if you think, and this is earlier chapters, say, hey, I can't logically work through this in my own mind, that's why you hire someone who's a professional. And that's what most of us need. Go ahead, Lisa. No, okay.
I just lost you. You all of a sudden you went mute, so I was wondering what happened.
Internet. Let's all continue to serve ourselves, understand ourselves. And then when we understand ourselves, let's learn the best way to use those talents to serve others, because our souls will grow and our lives will change. And more important than our lives is those around us. And that's why we do this, right? It's not just for ourselves, it's so that we can share with others. My whole thought, if I ever had to just change one thing, if people If everyone lived according to the golden rule, we would not really need laws. We wouldn't need government. We wouldn't really need anything. We would just treat each other the way we want to be treated. But until that utopia ever happens, we can at least start to live out a better place in our lives, the moments that we can. And they're not all perfect, but the moments that we can make those higher choices, we'll feel good about it.